Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey, today we're going to take a look at a friend's gun. Now this is a Colt Trooper III, and this thing is gorgeous. It is, I mean, there's barely any sign that it's been shot at all. I'll show you a couple of things on it that you can look at when you're looking at these things that are telltale wear spots that will show you when you got one of these that hasn't been shot a lot. This one has been shot very little. I just looked down the barrel, and it is dirty. It does need to be cleaned, but the rifling in this thing looks like it's never been shot. I mean, it's gorgeous. So I'm going to shift the camera down now and show you what we got going on here. Alright, now this is my new camera rotor, by the way. I broke my last one, which that's my fault. I had it plugged in and I tripped over the cord and yanked it out of the wall, so it didn't go well. Alright, so this is a Colt Trooper III, and it is just gorgeous. I mean, you look at it, there's no marks on it from a holster rash on the barrel or anywhere on the cylinder or anything. The only place where I can detect any wear at all on this gun is right on the cylinder. If you can look, there's a little tiny little thin line that goes between the two locking points here on the cylinder. That little tiny line happens because as you cock it and the cylinder rotates, the locking bar underneath comes up and engages. But as you rotate to the next cylinder, it drags across the cylinder right through there. And so you're going to get a line on each one of these. And that's the only wear on this thing that I can see. It's just, there's no wear on it. It's really, really clean. It's been fired very little. So we're going to take this thing and open it up, and I'm going to show you how to clean it. And we're going to go from there. Now again, this is, let me see if you can read it. I don't know whether you can or not. I think you can. Okay. This is a Colt, and it's a Trooper Mark III, okay, 357 Magnum. Now CTG stands for cartridge. Okay, so we've mounted our cleaning patch on our gun rod. We put our gloves on. We finally remembered to do that. And we're going to push this through this barrel and see what kind of stuff comes out of here. Now I am going to move the case because quite often the material gets squeezed out of this patch and it may drip on the case. So I'm going to get that out of the way. And then I'm going to push this on through here. Okay. Alright, get in there. There we go. Now. Alright, so as you can see, there was quite a bit of dirt in it. But in truth, this bore looks brand new inside. I mean, other than having that little bit of dirt in there, it looks great. So we're going to push it through a second time, make sure that we've got all our powder deposits nice and wet. Alright. There we go. Oh, get out of here. Alright. And now we're going to take a quick peek down that barrel and see how she looks. Now I've showed you this trick before, but you can stick a patch right in there in the frame like that, and it will reflect light up into the barrel, and it's going to make it real easy to see down that barrel, as you can see. So now we're going to inspect it, and like I said, this thing looks brand new inside. It's just gorgeous. It's like a mirror in there. Wow, what a nice looking barrel. Okay, so now when the barrel's not very dirty, you just use a jag on it. You should get it plenty clean. Shouldn't have any problem with it. There aren't even any lead deposits in that barrel, just nothing in there. So we're going to do it again with a dry patch. Okay, now what that's going to do is when we put the wet patch in, what happens is that we end up, anything that's in that barrel gets suspended in the liquid of the bore cleaner. So what we get out of that barrel is a patch with almost nothing on it, just a little bit of discoloration, brownness right around here, and that's from the actual liquid and the suspended particles that were in it. So we're going to run the patch through there a second time, and we pretty much done what we got to do with that barrel. So then we're going to work on the cylinder and get that all cleaned up. So run her in there. Okay. Now, this is something else I brought up before, but I want to bring it up again. This plastic cone is very important to use this. You push this into the muzzle of the barrel, and what it does is protect the rifling around the muzzle of the barrel so that the rod doesn't bang up and down and damage that rifling right at the end of the barrel, because this is one of the most critical points for accuracy in a gun, is right here at the tip. Now, again, things I've said in other videos, but I'm going to bring them up again. There is another part of the barrel that is a little bit ticklish that you don't want to damage also. And that's right around, well, right around here where my fingernail is, right at the end of the actual frame itself and where the barrel is. In the early part here, you have something called a forcing cone. And that forcing cone, what it is it's just what it sounds like. It's a cone, okay, in the barrel that forces the bullet to go into the rifling square. Okay, so there's a forcing cone on revolvers. You don't really have a forcing cone on semi-automatic pistols, but you do on a revolver. So you'll be able to see, if you, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but if you can see down inside the very edge of that barrel, you can see an area right here that doesn't have any rifling in it, and that's where the forcing cone is right at the beginning of the barrel. Okay, so there we go. Where the rifling starts, that's where the throat of the barrel is, and that's that part that's sensitive, so you don't want to bang that around either. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get the cylinder cleaned up, and for that we're going to need to wet another patch up and swab it out. And what I'm probably going to do is 3 of them, 1 for every 2 chambers. All right, so wet it, mount it, and push it through. Get on there, you. There we go. Get in there. All right, so and we also got a good bit of dirt out of that first cylinder. And if you noticed, I left the rod in that cylinder so that I know which one I just cleaned. All right, so now I'm going to turn the patch inside out, so I've got a clean side of the patch facing out, and I'm going to do the next chamber in line. Okay, and I'm following the same pattern. I'm going to leave the rod in and change to another patch. And that way I automatically keep track of which chambers I've cleaned and which ones I have not cleaned, because that's what we want. We only want to have to clean them once, so we're going to keep track. All right, we'll mount the patch and go into that one. All right, and again we got a good bit of dirt out of it. So we turn our patch right side out and stick it in there and do the next one. Okay, we got about a good bit of dirt out of that one too. So we've got 2 left. And since I made a mess, I'm going to clean that up a little bit. All right, and then wet my patch. Oh, didn't get it. No, I did. Okay, so get out of there. Okay. Now, when it comes to cleaning a gun, remember, you don't have to do all this just once. You can do this more than once until you're satisfied that the gun is clean. You can do it as many times as you feel you need to. If you look in there on inspection and say, well, it's not as clean as I think it should be, do it again. Won't hurt. So, all right, so we've got our cylinder clean now, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to take a quick look at it and inspect it a little bit, and it looks good. Now, what commonly happens is you'll quite often find little fibers that come off the patch down inside your cylinders. Don't worry about that too much. When you've got a wet patch, they tend to stick to the walls of the cylinder, but once you put the dry patch through there, they come right out. So you don't have to worry about them. They're not going to cause you a problem. So We're going to go through a few more patches doing this, but we're happy with the result that way. And again, leave the rod in so I know where I'm at. Turn the patch and stick it through the next one. Now, whatever method you want to use to index this to make sure you're in the right place and you haven't cleaned the same chamber 12 times, whatever method you like to use is fine. You don't exactly have to do it the way I do it, but you can. But it's completely up to you. You know, one of the things I found is the hardest thing in the world to do about these videos is to not be boring and not say the same thing over and over again. Okay, and we got one more to do, and then it's time to wipe this thing down. Now tonight we're going to take this gun out and we're going to shoot it again, but since I've never shot this gun, I wanted to go through it and verify that it was clean and that everything was in good shape. So I did a couple of test functions on it to make sure it was working properly. One of the things that I wanted to go through was this has what's known as a transfer bar ignition. Okay. Now let me get a pointer because it's kind of hard to see sometimes. Okay, this flat piece of metal right here is called a transfer bar. Now, when you pull the trigger back, okay, as you're pulling it back, that transfer bar moves up into position over the top of your firing pin, okay? Now, when you pull the trigger and hold the trigger back, that transfer bar does not drop down out of the way. It stays up because you're holding the trigger all the way back, okay? So when you pull the trigger and hold it and that hammer comes down and it hits that transfer bar and pushes that transfer bar into the firing pin, and then the firing pin protrudes into the chamber area and fires a gun. Now I'm going to see if I can get this right so you can see it. I don't know whether I can or not. There you go. You can just see the firing pin sticking through there. Okay, there we go. Alright, so as I release the trigger, that firing pin retracts back out of the way, okay, and then you can rotate the cylinder the next time you cock it. So I wanted to make sure that that was working properly and that everything looked good on this gun as far as working parts are concerned. And this thing is just magnificent. It's very hard to find a pistol of this age that is in this good a shape. This thing is like it's brand new and never been shot. So we're going to take our silicone cloth now and we're going to wipe it down and get it nice and clean on the outside too. Now there are a couple of places on all revolvers that I want to make you aware of that need to be, you got to pay attention to them because they tend to get dirty. And the first one is anywhere right around the seam between the cylinder and the barrel, because when this thing fires, hot gas is going to come out around here along with little pieces of copper jacket that gets shaved off and the forcing cone. Burnt powder, residue of all kinds is going to come out of there. And it's going to deposit itself all around the inside of the frame here, okay, both top and bottom. And so you're going to need to make sure that you get that area clean. So I'm going to try and rub a little bit in here and see if we come up with anything black. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Well, there we go. Okay, that's what came out of the top, up around the top of the barrel, which isn't surprising that it's there. This is what you have to do when you're cleaning the gun properly, is get places like this cleaned up. So, there we go. That's nice and clean. All right, so now we're going to do the rub down with our silicone rag to get the outside of this thing nice and clean and coated with silicone so that it's well protected and doesn't get rusted, okay? Now, silicone has a couple of things it does really well. One of them is it lubricates pretty well, and the other one is that it coats the steel and gets into the pores of the steel. Now, I realize this looks really shiny and you'd think that there's no holes in that steel, but if you took a magnifying glass and looked close enough, steel is porous. It does have little tiny holes in it. So we want to make sure that we get all that cleaned up because we don't want rust to start there. Now, there was one little spot that I saw on this thing earlier. Right back here on the back of the handle, there's one or two tiny little rust spots in there, okay? Again, this is not uncommon. For a pistol of this thing's age, to have this little is unheard of. I mean, this is phenomenal that there's that little on it. So, what a gun. I gotta tell you, this thing is some kind of gorgeous. I'm very, very impressed with this pistol, as you can probably tell, because I keep fawning over the thing. Now, I have a friend who wants to buy this gun, and I got to tell you, it's worth it. It really is. They get about $1,200 for these things. Now, that's collector money, but I don't see any reason at all why you couldn't get $500 out of this gun. It is just magnificent. And there we go. The outside of it's nice and cleaned up. Okay. The only other thing I'm going to do with it is put a couple of drops of oil in places. Now, I've had this discussion before, and I'm going to have it again, and that is about the amount of oil I use when I oil a gun. Now, down here in South Florida, we have a little different set of circumstances than a lot of places do, and that is that during the summertime, we pretty consistently have temperatures of 95 to 99 degrees, literally, every day in summer. Okay, but the worst part is our humidity is like 95%. I mean, it's incredibly high. If you take this gun out of this air-conditioned house outside right now, it is going to be covered with water because it condenses right out of the air. So I use a little bit more oil than most people do, and I don't apologize for it because I believe it to be necessary. I've changed parts because they had too little oil on them. I have never changed a part that had too much oil on it, okay? Now, I have absolutely had to clean them because they do get foul. The oil gets dirt and dust and everything, works into the oil, and you have some problems with it. But it's kind of, to me, the lesser of two evils. One, you wet down the gun every time you use it, and the other one, you end up wearing out parts. So we're going to put a drop of oil here and there. We're not going to go crazy, but we are going to lube this thing up. Now, I got lucky, and a little drop of water, a little drop of oil actually worked right down into here where I wanted it to go, but that was totally by accident. So I'm going to dry off the excess, okay? All right, and we're going to continue. There are a couple of other parts that are going to want some oil. Now, you remember that little line I told you about around that cylinder? Okay, we're going to put a little bit of oil on that lock, okay, that's right here, this lock dog. Okay, we're going to put a little oil on that just to keep it clean and moving properly. I'm going to put a little bit on the trigger. Let it run in there, okay? And now we don't want a lot, especially on the trigger, because if you put a lot in there, the gun can get slippery and hard to hold onto, and you don't want that. So now it doesn't take a lot of oil in here, so be sparing with it. You don't need a lot, okay? Now, one of the things I also like to do is on the release. I like to put a little bit of oil on the release. If this freezes, you got a big problem. You can't get the gun apart. So we're going to just touch it and touch it and touch it. All right. And then we're going to clean up the excess. Okay. All right. So that's got us to where I think we need to be. All right. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your Colt Trooper Mark III. everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey listen, if you're watching this video, if you're enjoying it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, okay? That's really important to us. And make sure you like us, and by all means, come to visit us at askbill1911.com.